Hi, everyone. I just came back from Boston and Philly, so in my spare time, I talk a lot about content marketing all over the place. So I did a conference in Philly and then one in Boston, and I shoot concert photography in my spare time. So every picture you see in here, well, 99% of them are my shots. And I shot Ringo Starr on Friday, and he has a guy from Toto in his band. So my voice is going out because, not from speaking too much, but they played 3 Toto songs. And if you know Africa, there's that chorus that I can't not sing live, and I was screaming, so I'm on the tee today. Anyway, Ringo Starr, man, he's still got it. He's great. So anyway, this is called How to Achieve FaceMelting Content Marketing ROI. If you know a little bit about me, I started off in the music business. That's my tie to music. I write a lot about music in my spare time. That's how I keep my writing chops up. The most important trait as a content marketer is to be a good writer, to be interesting. I think that's also key. And then so I worked at Sony Music for 12 years doing campaign and marketing for some of the biggest names around, we did Celine Dion, we did John Mayer. Then I transferred over and switched over to the world of B2B marketing. I don't know how that really worked out for me, but then I ran global content and social at Marketo for a couple of years, and then LinkedIn called, and now I'm here today. So I have one copy of my book I brought back. If anyone can name who this guitar player is, I took this shot at the Warfield Theater earlier this year. He's in another little band. This is his band. That should give it away. No? All right, there'll be another quiz. You guys are killing me. We're not off to a good start here. So, let's dive right in. Why am I here to talk about content marketing at LinkedIn? Well, I'll tell you, 2 of every professionals on the planet is on LinkedIn. What does that say? That says that there's opportunity to connect with what we call the professional mindset. The professional mindset is different than other social networks. I like to think that people spend time on other social networks, but they invest time when they're on LinkedIn. Another fun fact, our content pages receive 7 times the page views versus our job pages. What does that say? That says that our members are craving good content, right? And the numbers are there. Good original content. And then, of course, the world's largest professional network, 380 million members worldwide, growing at more than 2 per second. I'm assuming that we are all on LinkedIn in this room. Yes. Gentlemen, yes? Yes? All right. So, we take you back to 1977. This is Mr. John Travolta. This is Saturday Night Fever. This is the biggest selling soundtrack in the history of the world. It was #1 on the charts for 24 weeks straight. It's in the National Archives. They are trying to preserve this as a piece of history. Right? But there was a problem, because all the critics wanted to talk about was disco. All the media worldwide, all they would talk about is disco this, disco that. Nobody else could get any coverage at all. But there was this little movement happening called punk rock, right? And they had a story to tell, but they could not get anyone to pay attention to them. Bands like The Clash, the Sex Pistols, the Ramones, they had something to say, but nobody would listen. So what did they do? Well, they started to tell their own story. And they became so outlandish in the way they would tell this story that they forced people to listen to them. They forced the media to pay attention to them. Because the future was unwritten, in the words of Joe Strummer. Joe Strummer was a disruptor. He was a thought leader, right? The Sex Pistols wanted to throw a brick at your head. They wanted full-on anarchy. But Joe Strummer, he wanted to change the world. In fact, he said, if you don't like the world, then change it. So that's what they did. As they became greater and greater storytellers, the media started to pay attention, and next thing you know, punk rock is killed disco. We can all thank God for that, right? Because this world would be a much different place. You all would have much different hairstyles and much different clothes if it wasn't for Joe Strummer. But my point being is that Mr. Jello Biafra, quiz number 2, is the lead singer of... Oh man, you guys are killing me. Oh, thank you. Right there. I'm the only person in the history of LinkedIn to quote Jello Biafra in an executive briefing more than once. Right? Jello Biafra is the singer of the Dead Kennedys, a punk rock band from San Francisco. He was in the middle of this. He lived this. And this is my favorite quote. He said, don't hate the media, but become the media. This is where we're at today. This is where content marketing is right now. Right? Don't rely on the media to tell your story for you. Don't wait for somebody to write about you. Right? You have the means to tell your own story. Why would you not want to do that? That's where we're at. That is where content marketing is. It's up to you. And I will talk to you today about several ways to do that, how we do it at LinkedIn, and then somehow how my friends who run small businesses run this as well. This is easy to do. So, This is lucky. You guys, the small business world is kind of like the punk rockers of content marketing. You guys can do whatever the hell you want to. You can get out there, you can be as flamboyant, you can be as disruptive, you can just tell your story in a unique way, right? You're going to disrupt this world. You're going to get people to talk about you. You're going to get people excited. You're going to tell your story. You're going to spell out your narrative for the world. And they will reciprocate if you answer their number one question, which is the question that your product or service solves, right? Easy. Content marketing is easy. Being interesting, writing this stuff is the difficult part. But we're in luck because we're in a world where we don't need more content, we need more relevant content. So what that means is these big brands like HubSpot, who have been publishing 47 blog posts a day, that's not necessary anymore. The content, or the search engines have killed these content farms, right? These people who pump out keyword-loaded stuffed crap content to fill up the search results of search engines. That does not work anymore. Now you have to cut to pure relevance, right? It's a measure of being the best answer to that question. What is the question that your prospect or your potential customer is going to type into the search engine, and how do you rank on page 1? Because what happens if you rank on page 2? Anyone know the joke, where's the best place to hide a dead body? On page 2 of Google. Thank you. But there's a fine line between relevance and non-relevance. As we see here, this is a recent study that shows that 44% of overall respondents said they would consider ending a brand relationship because of irrelevant promotions. 44% will stop following your company if you are not relevant. An additional 22% said they would definitely defect from your brand altogether. That's bad news. But the good thing is we don't need more content, we need more relevant content. And the better news is you can get more out of your content with less effort in this day and age. So, again, think about this. Content marketing is writing content to answer questions. That's it in a nutshell. This is what it is. It's sometimes entertaining, it's sometimes inspiring, but it always drives action. This is from my good friend Ann Handley. She wrote the book Content Rules, which is the book that started me on content marketing. This is still published in 2012. Still the best book on content marketing, hands down. Content Inc. would be number 2 if you don't have Content Inc. From Joe Polizzi. Tons of stories from small businesses telling the story, building this narrative, and then the business comes. I'll talk about that in a second. But your number one job, on top of answering that question, is to empathize with your prospects and customers. But Ann Handley talks about this in a deeper way, to pathologically empathize. So you're not just knowing what questions, what they're feeling. You're digging deep down inside to actually understand how they are feeling at that moment. How are they feeling? You're putting yourself in their shoes, and you're walking in their shoes, and you're determining how they feel. That is where the content connects. If you don't have that connection, you're simply missing opportunities, right? So I asked Ann Handley, I said, what does good content look like? This question comes up all the time. Every time we create a piece of content here at LinkedIn, this is the formula we look at. I cut and paste this directly out of the email. Has anybody ever seen this before? So what you have here is you have 3 elements, right? Useful times enjoyable times inspired equals innovative content. You also have multiplication symbols and not addition symbols. Why? Because each variable is dependent on the one before it. If one falls out, the whole equation falls to pieces. So useful. Ask yourself, is this piece of content useful? Does it answer a question? Does it solve a problem? Very simple. Number 2, is it enjoyable? Can your prospect or customer get through that entire piece of content? If the only people reading your content is your mother or your significant other, you might not be enjoyable. Personality in your content. And then number 3, inspired. If this piece of content does not inspire that person to take the next step in the buyer's journey or the next step in the acquisition in the B2C terms, then why create it at all? Those 3 things together, very simple, innovative content. So, in the world where we think about not more content, but more relevant content, we came up with this thing when I was at Marketo. Now, I know you're thinking, that was Marketo, you were a big company. There was one content marketer on the team. I ran everything. I ran social channels. I ran the blog. Created these big rocks, which I'm going to talk about next. But the big rock is where you guys are going to shine here. The big rock is a substantial piece of content that you invest a little bit in, and you're going to get a tremendous return, right? What I talked about earlier, as a content marketer, your job is to answer that number one question better than anyone else. How do you do that? Well, you move from this mindset of thinking like a publisher to actually publishing like a publisher. When I got to LinkedIn, the biggest question on our customers and prospects' minds was simple. How do I market effectively on LinkedIn? You type that into the search engine, what happens? We're on page like 78 or something. It was crazy. But this is a conversation we should own. Marketing on LinkedIn. You type that in, and what shows up on page 1? Social Media Examiner, Social Media Today, Social Media Explorer, every blog under the planet, and we're nowhere to be found. That's a problem. This is our conversation. They are stealing our traffic, and they're telling our story for us. So I'm going to get it back. But this is a pretty big piece of content. It's going to take a little bit of time. So it's funny. This guy comes up to me at Content Marketing World, and he goes, I love the big rock concept. But he says, as a marketer, there's too much value in that content. And I said to him, are you out of your damn mind? What marketer's ever downloaded a piece of content and said, there's too much value there, I would like to return this? Zero. I market to marketers. What prospect, what customer's ever done it? No, you can never over-deliver in content value. But he had a short-sighted view what we would do with that one piece of content. This is more with less. This is the turkey analogy. This comes from Rebecca Lieb, one of the smartest content marketers I've ever met from the Altimeter group, right? I will share these slides with you, so don't be worried. I talk very fast. That's just I have one speed. It's overdrive. Overdrive and overkill. Anyway. So years ago, when I didn't know what I was doing, I sat down with Rebecca, and I was interviewing her for the Marketo blog. And I said, what do you tell these businesses who say, I don't have enough content to fuel my social, my demand gen, my acquisition channels, my e-commerce channels, etc. She says, look around at the content you have and think about your content like turkey. On Thanksgiving, you have this big, beautiful bird. And then what are you doing for the next 30 days? Well, you're slicing and dicing this turkey into turkey sandwiches, turkey pot pie, turkey stew, whatever. You're making things with turkey you probably should not be making with turkey, but you're being efficient with your turkey. The same can be said with your content. The big rock. One big rock piece of content can fuel your social and demand gen and acquisition and e-commerce efforts for a minimum of a quarter, and sometimes up to a year, and sometimes up to 2. This is content marketing. One big rock, slice and dice. This is what it looks like. This is literally the internal chart from LinkedIn. So we use the turkey slices to fuel our main content hubs here at LinkedIn. The company page, if you're a small business and you don't have a company page, this is your hub. This is your hub. Post at least one time a day. This shows up in search results. If you have a page and you're posting, it will be number 2. It will be the number 2 result. What does that mean? That means it can knock a potential competitor, down off the page. So free to do, easy to do. Don't forget the company page. Sponsored updates, we'll talk about that in a second. LinkedIn groups. You get out of LinkedIn groups what you put into them. This is a small community. If you have a conversation and you want to nurture that conversation and pull that into a group, into a community, a LinkedIn group is a great place to do that. And then SlideShare. One of the most terribly underutilized platforms, especially for B2B marketing. Some people say, oh, it's just a content repository for your webinar slides. That's not right. It's a platform for visual content thought leadership. This is where you can tell your story in a visual medium, right? And then SlideShare, once you put your content up there, you can actually embed this across blogs, landing pages. It renders beautifully in the feed. This is a way to add rich media content immediately to your content strategy. Interactivity. It's beautiful. In the back-end analytics, you can see link backs. You can see views. You can see who's linking back. You can see all types of scenarios on demographics. You can drill down to this stuff and see who is viewing your content. And then that gives you insights on what you need to create more of moving forward. All right, so this is the big rock. Again, when I started here at LinkedIn, there was 2 people on the content team. So I'm telling you, anybody can do this. And if you do it right, it's going to pay off. I promise you. So this is the Sophisticated Marketer's Guide to LinkedIn. This is everything you'd want to know about marketing on LinkedIn, written strategically instead of instructionally, because what happens when you get an instruction manual?
Go to sleep.
You go to sleep, you throw it in the trash, and then you go to sleep, and you wake up and you go to YouTube. Anyway, so we didn't want to write an instruction manual. We wanted to write helpful content, right? Everybody's telling the story of LinkedIn, but nobody's telling it from our point of view. Nobody's telling it the way we want to tell it. We want to own this conversation. So I wrote this book. We took lots of third-party influencers from the space, content marketers in the space. I market to marketers. People say I have an easier job than you. I beg to differ. I'm constantly being judged by other marketers. Not fun. Anyway, so we interviewed these thought leaders, put them in. We could sell this book on Amazon if we wanted to, but we didn't want to. We wanted to give it away for free. Top of the funnel. We own this conversation now. I'll show you the results. This is what it looks like when we repurpose it. I don't want to overwhelm you guys, but we didn't create anything new. Once we created that big rock, we simply lifted these pieces out. These are the tentacles out there in the social world, right? So all of these pieces were already created. We simply lifted them out. and put them out there into the world. This is the rolling thunder approach. Video. Video is becoming so important in content marketing, but it's expensive, it's difficult, and you think people don't like getting their pictures taken. For the love of God, they hate being on video. Everybody hates being on video. I don't know what it is. But if you figure out a way to, where I've cracked the code on this recently is to have a big rock piece of content and then find ideas and launch little series. So as small businesses, man, you guys can shoot this on your iPhone. Jay Bear shoots his daily vlog. That's the worst term in the world, a vlog. It sounds like a Vlad the Impaler. I think he's a vampire killer, right? No good? Anyway, you got to crack the code with video, right? And the key is to focus on the audio more than anything else. But the way we've cracked it is we've found a big rock piece of content, and then we've put these little, I kind of think of ourselves like a little Netflix, right? Like a little series. So not just one video, it's called random acts of content everywhere, but little video series. So the webinars, we did a series called Ask LMS, where you simply tweet or send an email to asklms@asklms.com, and then we answer a question, and with a little video, and we shoot it on a camera, sometimes an iPhone, whatever, and then we do a little bit of editing. But it's an ongoing series, and then we include that into the big rock, so it keeps growing, and it takes on. We're bringing the community with us here. But Man versus Funnel, we shot that in 35 minutes, and it's driven thousands of views on that. But these little series, almost like I said, like a Netflix channel, where we create our own little mini-series, and people subscribe. Incredibly powerful. So that's how you crack the code for video, I think. Focus on the audio and just focus on a little mini-series. So what does success look like? This is called the Bat Out of Hell strategy. Bat Out of Hell came out in 1978. I purchased this record about 11 times in my life. I'm sure most of you have as well. Anyway, the point is once you get this big rock, it has to always be on. Right? It's purely relevant. It's answering the number one question. This thing will go on for decades, if you will. In this case of Meatloaf, I bought the 8-track, I bought the vinyl, I bought the cassette tape, I bought the CD, I bought the double live CD, I bought the 20th anniversary. I went and saw him in Vegas when he did the residency tour there. Amazon's retargeting me now across the web saying he's coming back with a remastered 50th anniversary. It's crazy, but it's always on. I will buy this record 7 more times in my lifetime because it's relevant to me. Right? So think about that with your big rock. I've seen waterfall models in the B2B space that look more complicated than plans for a nuclear reactor. We're overcomplicating this stuff. This is what it looks like. Now, either you're B2B, B2C, e-commerce, whatever. This all works. You have the turkey slices at the top. They're not gated, right? Helpful, easy content lifted out of the big rock. The big rock is gated. I guess you would call that acquisition if you're e-commerce, right? But then you go down to an MQL. If you're not a marketing qualified lead, then you go over to the nurture department. You're nurtured with more turkey slices. And if you are, you go over to a sales rep, and then we hopefully close your revenue. This is what it looks like. This is the model. Very simple, powered by one piece of content. This is called For Those About to Launch. You guys are supposed to say, fire. I just saw AC/DC a couple weeks ago. They were, Brian Johnson still sings like that. It's insane. Anyway, so not only was I creating a big rock piece of content, answering the number one question on my prospects and customers' mind, but I wanted to prove that Marketing Solutions worked as a product, right? Because I was new. LinkedIn Marketing Solutions was pretty new 2.5 years ago. It was a difficult story to tell because we had a bunch of products. So I tied them all together, and this is what it looked like. So, I will tell you this. The biggest mistake I see in content marketing today is to create a piece of content and then put it up on your blog and walk away. That is the absolute worst thing you can do. Have you squeezed all the value you can out of that one piece of content? Think of this is a horrible idea, but think of like Tony Soprano. Like he strangles all the life out of that piece of content until there's nothing left, and then he buries it in the desert. That's when it's time to move on to the next piece. I can't believe I just said this. This isn't being recorded, is it? Oh my God, it is. Look at that. Edit that one out. I don't know where that came from. Anyway, so this is what it looks like. Look at those cannons. No good? All right, so anyway, so we launched this thing. This is the big rock. We don't launch it one and done. We launch it every big rock like we would launch a product, right? Cross-functionally. I go to the entire organization, and I find every person from PR to sales enablement to the SEO team, to demand gen or acquisition, and I say, how can you help me promote this? We put balloons on people's chairs, we print this stuff out, we celebrate this piece of content, right? Much like I celebrate Kiss's entire catalog, we celebrate this piece of content. But we launched this thing, email, blog, in-mail, company page, sponsored updates, slide share, display, PPC, Twitter, everything, guns a-blazing, coming out swinging. Everything on here, except for, of course, email and Twitter and a little PPC. This is all LinkedIn. So now we're going to see what happens next. These are the results out of the gates. These are exploding pie charts. Anyone ever seen an exploding pie chart before? So what's interesting is this is a two-person team. This is one piece of content. And you'll see here, this is MQLs coming in globally, marketing qualified leads. That's my goal, is to drive marketing qualified leads. What you see here is these are the MQLs coming in globally. We did not launch this thing globally. We launched it in the United States. But it was so relevant, and we had so much traction out of the gate because we came out swinging, we put the full guns behind it, that it went global on its own. The viral approach. But I didn't really care about it at the time. I was looking for answer this question in the US. But the more important chart is over here. These are MQLs driven by channel. Now, what you see there at the top is the big Terminator explosion coming out of the left. That is 34% driven by email. That makes sense because we launched this piece of content via email, right? So leads are coming in. But right after that, this is the first 30 days, by the way. This is the first 30 days. The reason I'm showing you first 30 days is because you look, email number 1, blogs number 2, 30% of MQLs, marketing qualified leads, coming in from the blog. Why is that? Because we have a rolling thunder approach going on the blog. The turkey slices are fueling that thing. Right behind that, sponsored updates, native advertising. We'll talk about that in a second. But if you look at this chart, 60 days out, what happens? The blog becomes the number one driver because the blog, we've exhausted the reach of the Big Rock launch. Now the turkey slices, we take a turkey slice from the Big Rock and we launch one every single week on the blog, right? And we're not recreating anything. These things are already launched. Or we're just lifting these out of the guide. But the rolling thunder approach, 60 days out, the blog becomes number one. Now you take that 90 days out, what happens then? Then you've exhausted, you have the decay of the email. You have the exhausted turkey slices. They've done their job, but they are out there for good. And they're gaining authority from SEO and search. Don't worry about that. But then 90 days out, you look at number 3, and sponsored updates, native advertising becomes the number one driver. Why is that? Because you've exhausted your inbound reach. You've exhausted your organic reach here. You need to put some paid behind it now. And with the targeting, and if you know your audience, which I hope you do, because you'll figure that out when you're looking for that number one question, all you gotta do is target them. And the rest is easy. Right? But there are folks out there that will tell you that inbound marketing is all you need. That is not true. Inbound marketing alone is like hanging out with the same group of high school kids your entire life. I hated high school. I was a heavy metal kid. I got picked on. I don't want to go back to that experience. But I broke out of the Midwest, right? If you want to break your content out of your initial reach, your inbound reach, you got to put some paid behind it. That's how you get to your second degree connections. That's how you get to target your specific audience. In these campaigns, in these turkey slices, you have enough content to fuel these campaigns. And you can't miss, I promise you, with the targeting. It's so precise. But it's gonna take a little bit of effort and a little bit of budget. So, this is called FaceMelting Content Marketing ROI. Does anyone know this gentleman behind me or to this side of me? Thank you, thank you. Yngwie Malmsteen is a neoclassical Swedish guitar master. He's been known to melt faces with his guitar solos. Mr. Eddie Van Halen documented in Wikipedia to melt faces with his guitar solos. And finally, my man Jimi Hendrix, also known to melt faces with his blistering blues guitar solos. But in the history of the world, there has only been one face that's actually melted. That was at the end of Raiders of the Lost Ark. 18,000% ROI on one piece of content. I will tell you this. Why did that work so well? Not because we're LinkedIn. That has nothing to do with it. The fact is that we understood our audience. We created a piece of content that answered their question better than anyone else. And then we turned it on and we left it on. And it's still on today. 2 years. The Sophisticated Marketer's Guide to LinkedIn has been out for 2.5 years. And it's still our number one MQL driver, marketing qualified lead driver, month over month, only to be replaced in December of 2014 by its follow-up, the Sophisticated Marketer's Guide to Thought Leadership. But this works, and I'm telling you, as a small business owner, just create that one Big Rock, slice it up, and then turn it on. That's how this works. You don't have to create 1,000 big rocks. You don't have to write 57 blogs a day. But you do have to find out what that question is. And you have to be the best answer. And then you have to turn it on. So, this is the plan. This is a Gantt chart in the form of a mixing console. This is what my designer thought would be funny. This is what it looks like. Big Rock. This is one plan for one piece of content for 1 quarter. The Big Rock webinar, influencer outreach, right? Getting those influencers, super important. Then turkey slices, and then underneath all that supporting it is a little bit of native advertising. But more importantly, what I've discovered after 5 years of doing this is that the diffusion of innovations applies to a Big Rock piece of content. Why is that? Because even if you don't have the conversation, even if you don't have a huge following, you're going to get your innovators, right, who are searching on this, and they're going to pick it up. Then once you get some traction with some SEO, some search authority, a little paid advertising, start targeting these folks. Then you get your early adopters. Then you're going to get your sweet spot with early majority. But you don't ever let this go. You keep updating this and updating this and updating this. I think of when I went to see Motley Crue in Las Vegas last year. They played 30 nights in a row. I went to 3 of those. I felt like I was on tour with the band. But the idea was, when I got there, I was carrying this record around when I was, 13 years old, 1984, for Christ's sake. But there was a whole new audience beyond my. I'm 41 years old. Beyond my metal, community I hang out with. There was a whole new audience there looking to discover Motley Crue. Like a whole bunch of young kids. So what I'm saying there is that there's always somebody new who's going to discover your content, but you have to keep it updated. If Motley Crue still look like they do in '84, well, they kind of do. but they've written new material. They've taken the hair down a notch. Their voices aren't as sharp as they used to be. But that's not my point. The point is they're updating the material enough to where that new audience can discover it. So always keep that in mind. This Big Rock is an investment, and you want to let this go all the way through this cycle. I promise you this works. By the way, if I had to rank events in my life, it would be Baby, Wedding Day, Motley Crue in Las Vegas, in that order. So, and it's scalable, right? So the next question on my customers and prospects' minds was, how do I create my first Big Rock? So I wrote the book on it, and this cover was based on a cross between AC/DC's Ball Breaker album, the one with Heat Seeker on it, yes, and Excalibur. I wanted to empower marketers to create this Big Rock piece of content to drive results. Like you pull the guitar out of the rock, you get it, right? Anyway, so then this is what we did. This is the formula. This works. Launched it on the blog, turned on the sponsored updates. This is where it gets really cool. One piece of content. Let's take a step back and say, in 2016, people always ask me, what's next in content marketing? What's next in content marketing? 2 things. Storytelling. We'll move from storytelling to anecdotes. Why is that? Because stories have a beginning, a middle, and an end, and then they're over. But anecdotes, and they're difficult to tell, right? It's kind of like the buzzwords, like you got to be transparent and authentic. It's kind of like that right now. Whatever. Storytelling's hard, but if you can take anecdotes, these little small interesting points, and highlight those, it's going to work better. The difference between a story and an anecdote is best described by the difference between a biography and a memoir. A biography, you got one shot. It's your whole life. If you screw that up, then you got to do like an unauthorized version later, and then nobody buys that. But a memoir is a point in your life that you want to talk about. Think about that. Think about when you're talking about storytelling and content marketing. Think about that anecdote. Think about that one point. It's much easier to do, especially with limited resources, than to tell this grandiose story like Chipotle and Airbnb. Right? So anyway, but the other part of that, the other next step is amplification and personalization. Now, there's a huge gulf between where we're at today and the world of Netflix and Amazon. They have mastered the art of personalization. But with your content, and I'm going to plug LinkedIn because this is what I do, but this is direct sponsored content, right? You can take one piece of content and you can craft that message to a different audience. It's personalization without the legwork, right? So we take one piece of content and we target CMOs. But we don't say, check out this piece of content. That is lazy marketer syndrome. Check out? You don't order anybody to check something out. Who the hell says check out anyway? What year? 86? Mike Damone from Fast Times at Ridgemont High? Anyway, the point is, One piece of content directed towards CMOs, and we know what they're talking about, right? Because we did our research. They want transformational change in their business. So we're going to take this one piece of content, we're going to target them, we're going to talk about how this piece of content will help them transform their business. We're going to go down to a marketing director. We're going to say, demonstrate the ROI of your marketing efforts because we know that's what's important to them. And then we're going to go down to social media managers, and we're going to say, get the insights you need to drive the engagement, because that's what they're concerned about, engagement. One piece of content targeted to 3 different people, personalized to them. That's how you get the most out of one piece of content. So then you do the webinar announcement, of course. This is a little bit complex, but if you're investing in one piece of content, turn on the display, turn on the retargeting, test these headlines. I wanted to make sure if people didn't understand what Big Rock was, maybe that was a limited term, that we changed it to a step-by-step guide to creating marquee content. It's the same piece of content, but we're going to talk to 2 different languages. I want to A/B test these titles to see what works. We've seen increases of 400% click-through rates from tweaking the title on a piece of content. 400%. That's insane. That could be the difference between, 100 sales or 2 sales. That's crazy, crazy numbers, all by tweaking a headline and testing. You can do this yourself. It's easy to do. This is what it looks like, kind of the big rocks that fuel our LinkedIn lead accelerators dreams. Very sophisticated, crazy B2B stuff. So we'll skip that. But I will tell you this. 2 years in, a content marketing team of 2. We've grown, we've doubled in size, we're now at 4. But we have vertical content teams, and we have global content teams, right? But the lesson for small businesses here is that we created what I call an owned media empire. And what that means is we tell our own story, right? So, but we built this trust around the sophisticated marketer, almost like sort of a brand. But we don't want to obviously compete with LinkedIn because that's the goal. But we can tell the story of the sophisticated marketer on LinkedIn, and it builds a level of trust. And so that is not the, we created 2 guides, and I'm working on the 3rd. That is not the Sophisticated Marketer's Guide to Punctuation. That is the trilogy that will complete the series this fall. Stay tuned. But you'll also see that we took the same concept and we verticalized some of the content. And Jen Grazel's team, she's back there. She put this whole on. She invited me down here to say thank you, Jen. But she did a fantastic job taking this big rock content approach and this turkey slices. And now she's going after owning this conversation in the FinServe vertical. This is incredibly powerful, right? Nobody else is doing this. It's easy to do. I don't know why nobody else is doing this because it drives crazy results. We even launched a podcast. You can launch a podcast for pennies on the dollar. This podcast was launched a little while ago, and it became the #3 podcast in the country, the #3 marketing podcast in the country overnight. Why? My guest was Chris Bueller. Anyone know who Chris Bueller is? No offense, Chris. He's a nobody. He's a friend of mine. But he's the one who built this whole empire with me. But they this is being recorded. I hope Chris doesn't see this. But the idea was we built trust around the sophisticated marketers. So whatever we put out around the sophisticated marketers is going to drive results. Think about that. How do you bring this community together? So this is a picture of Mr. David Bowie in 1978-79. This is not an illustration. This is really what Mr. Bowie looked like. This is an actual photograph. Anyway, so backstage after a show, this is when he was in a Ziggy Stardust phase, losing his mind. And somebody came up to him, Rolling Stone reporter came up and said, "Mr. Bowie, are you original?" He said, "Absolutely not." He said, famously, "The only art I'll ever study is stuff that I can steal from." So I ask you, what is your big rock? And what are your turkey slices? What conversation do you want to own? And how are you going to keep that Rolling Thunder approach to own that conversation? This is easy stuff. You just have to get started. Yesterday. While you're creating that big rock piece of content, I will tell you this, it needs to live somewhere. And you need some sort of approach that's going to get you started with content marketing today. I call this, the blog is a social media rug that ties the room together. The dude abides. What do I mean by that? I mean that the blog is certainly not the sexiest piece of social media, but it is the most important. It is where you, small businesses, tell your story. It's a running narrative, right? Don't confuse a resource center with the blog. A resource center is indexed, it's searchable, it's a library where you keep all your content, right? But a blog is like a journal. It's like a diary. It's a running narrative. It goes in one direction. It has comments. It has likes. It has shares. It's living. It's breathing. It's indexed in seconds by the search engines, right? So how do you keep that Rolling Thunder approach going? This is called the Blogging Food Groups. This comes from Rick Burns at HubSpot. I did not This is not my idea. I just borrowed it and put my own spin on it, but this is how we approach our content. So as you're creating your big rock, you got to get started on the blog immediately. Don't overcomplicate this stuff. A blog can be 500 words. It can be 250 words. Subscribe to Seth Godin's email. You will see 250 words that I call the punch in the face blog. This thing will get you every single day. It's brilliant, right? So the blog is as long as it has to be. It's conversational. It's very forgiving if you make a mistake, but you have to start today. Marcus Sheridan from River Pools. He sells fiberglass pools. Anyone know Marcus Sheridan, the sales lion? In 2008, his company, River Pools, got just killed by the economy, and he was almost broke. So what did he do? He turned to content marketing. He turned to his blog, and he started answering questions in very unique ways. He figured out every single question you could ever ask as a pool customer or someone searching for a pool, and he wrote an answer to it. And now his blog, River Pools blog, is the most trafficked pool blog in the United States, if not the world. Just from that unique angle, he was just simply answering questions. Now, he took a unique approach to where he divvied that up and he did different things. Like he would take, the story is so brilliant. He would like slam things into fiberglass pools. He would drop trucks on them, just to like crazy stuff like this to show you how powerful they were. But he also had the utility of it as well. So he had the entertainment value. He had the fun quirkiness that is Marcus Sheridan. But then he also did the thing where he answered questions. So this is the blogging food groups. This is how I did it at Marketo. This is how we do it at LinkedIn. This is how I suggest you mix up the content on your blog, because if you don't, it's like eating the same lunch every day. You're going to get bored with it. So what we do is we split up our content, much like you would the blogging food groups or your food groups every day with your lunch. So you think about this number. We start off Monday. This is in no particular order. You can't follow this exactly, nor should you be. But mix it up. We start on Monday with what we call raisin brand content. This is stuff that's easy to dish out, right? It's 5 tips for this. It's how to do this. It's a very simple, quick 500-word blog post. You do not know where your audience is coming from over the weekend. They might be a little tired, a little hungover. You don't know. You want to ease them into the blog with some light content. Easy to dish out. That's raisin brand, right? Spinach content on Tuesday. A little bit more of a thought leadership angle. It's difficult to chew, even though it's good for you. That's why we call it spinach. Wednesday, you go into the roast post. The roast post is a substantial beast of a post. It could be anywhere between 1,500 words and 3,000 words. It's a conversation. It's a long-tail keyword, a long-tail query, a very specific request that you want to own very quickly. It's got lots of link backs to other resources. It's where you own this conversation very quickly. It's almost like a big rock, but it's in the form of a blog, and it's something you can crank out very quickly. Thursday, we call that Tabasco. Tabasco is where you light a fire, right? Call somebody out, take a very strong opinion on a very hot topic. Tabasco. You guys can do this, man. You're the punk rockers of marketing here. And then finally, Friday, we call that chocolate cake. Chocolate cake content could be a fun post. It could be an infographic. It could be anything that's fun that sends your audience into the weekend with a smile so they will return on Monday and go through this entire journey with you again. Now, I know as a small business you might be resource constrained, but I will tell you this. You don't have to write every single day, but you write when you have something to say. You write when you have a question to answer. Write once a day. If you don't have a blog, you can do this on LinkedIn Publishing. Link it back to your website. Tons of opportunities there. Now, I think, so I've mapped this out to a journey in heavy metal, if you will. This is what it looks like. I put this together for illustrative purposes only. Monday, raisin brand. How to appreciate heavy metal. Very light post. Eases you into the Monday. Goes into how heavy metal is keeping us sane. This is an article from The Atlantic about a guy who stays sane because he lives through his heavy metal music. He lives through Ozzy Osbourne. So when he's at Starbucks and the guy in front of him is putting 40,000 pounds of sugar into his coffee, and he's like, what the hell are you doing? He just lives through his music, and he walks out patiently. This is in The Atlantic. That's crazy stuff, but it's thought-provoking. It's thought leadership. Oh, the history of new wave of British heavy metal. Quick conversation on a very new wave of heavy metal. British new wave of heavy metal is very specific, not a broad topic, not marketing on LinkedIn. This is how do I market on LinkedIn using LinkedIn groups every other Tuesday of the week on odd-dated months, right? Very specific. That was for illustrative purposes only. But he's going to own this conversation very quickly. Then we get into Thursday, 5 70s metal bands who are better than Black Sabbath. That is impossible because Black Sabbath invented heavy metal. I commented on this post 94 times. Then chocolate cake. Have a little bit of fun with your content. I wrote this in my personal blog. It's the most trafficked post on my blog next to 5 remarkable photos of Kiss without makeup, which I own that, page 1. I'm not search on that. Anyway, so what I did was, this is easy, this is fun stuff. I went to Amazon, and I was buying Led Zeppelin 4 for the 25th goddamn time. And I noticed that it had like 5,000 5-star reviews. This is arguably the greatest rock album ever recorded next to the wall. Thank you. But I looked down and it had like 100 1-star reviews. I'm like, who in the hell can give Led Zeppelin 4 1 star? 3? Maybe, but not 4. This is the masterpiece. And so I pulled them all together, put them up there. I didn't write anything. I just cut and paste these together. I'm getting hundreds of thousands of hits on this. But I will share one real post that happened. It's from a customer. It says, yes, I know some people gave this album 5 stars, but I've seen some 5-star reviews for the movie Howard the Duck here. So, if you don't have that big rock, or you don't have the time to invest in it, then this is another secret little hack you can do. Once you write 5 blogs, or once you look through your blogs and you can tie them together into a certain theme, you can roll them into your own big rock. This looks more like a piece of kryptonite. I don't know what that came from. But I could potentially take those 5 blog posts and turn it into heavy metal music in Britain, an ebook. Tie it all together, because people don't want separate pieces. They want it packaged up beautifully, because God knows we all don't need any more tabs open in Chrome. All right, coming down to the stretch here. Oh, this is how I wrote this post, a guest post on the Content Marketing World Institute, a blog post about becoming a hybrid marketer. And then it turned into this series on the LinkedIn blog. And then this content was already out there, and we just rolled it all together into this ebook. And it's like the 4th most downloaded piece of content we've ever put out. It's crazy stuff. The content's out there, but it's on how you package it up and target it. Well, I brought in a bonus piece of chocolate cake. When I worked at Marketo, I remember coming into John Miller's office. He's the co-founder. No relation. He'll be the first to tell you that, not me. And I was coming back from Vegas, seeing Guns N' Roses 4 nights in a row. And I was on the plane. I was a little bit hungover. And I said, John, I have a great idea for a piece of content. When I got in the office, I said, John, ran to his office. I said, it's called 5 Content Marketing Lessons from Guns N' Roses. And he always said, he goes, I don't hate it. Which means full steam ahead, if you know John. But what would happen next? We posted this on a Friday. What would happen next would completely blow my mind. Put on your marketing seatbelts. Guns N' Roses retweeted this. They shared my content. That means that Axl Rose may or may not be consuming my content. This is not Photoshop, folks. This really happened. Now, what the hell does this do? You're thinking, what the hell does this do for the marketing automation audience? Nothing. I'll be honest. It's absolutely nothing. That audience will never purchase Marketo. But what it did do is it injected some personality into our content. It left a smile on their face, and they came back Monday, and they went through this journey with me again. And that's all I wanted. I'm running out of time, so I'm going to cruise through this very quickly. This is Mr. Jimi Hendrix. This is at Woodstock, 1969. And this is arguably when Jimi Hendrix was at the peak of his career. It was in his contract that Jimi had to headline every show he played, right? So why is he playing during the daytime? This doesn't make any sense. He was scheduled to headline Woodstock, but Woodstock ran so far behind schedule, Jimi was supposed to go on 11 p.m. on Sunday night. He went on at almost 9 a.m. on Monday morning. So you only see this shot because you don't see the crowd, because 2/3 of them had gone home. They are not there. But Jimi doesn't care what he did that day. What he did that day was he took the Star-Spangled Banner and he transformed it into something that no one's ever heard before. That is what thought leaders do. They take an idea and they transform it into something truly novel. And if they do it well, they become legends, right? So, Mr. Hendrix transformed this song, the Star-Spangled Banner. He took psychedelic music, transformed it into blues. I know what you're thinking. You're thinking, oh, Eric Clapton. Hell no. Eric Clapton might have optimized the blues for the rest of the world. But Jimi, he transformed it. And decades after his death, his thought leadership lives on. Mr. John Mayer, who is also one of the greatest guitar players on the planet, says, who I am as a guitarist is defined by my failure to become Jimi Hendrix. That is powerful. That is thought leadership. That is what, if you don't have this angle of thought leadership in your content marketing, then you're not differentiating yourself. I really like this quote from Ann Hanley again. I love Ann. I wouldn't be here today without Ann. But she said, I said, Ann, is there room for thought leadership in both B2B and B2C? She said, absolutely, because the default with many brands is they market like they're selling to everyone. But a differentiator for any brand is knowing who you are and telling a different story. That's the key here. because customers need brands that want to lead the conversation. They need a reason to follow you. If your product is so boring that you don't think you can get followers, then you're thinking purely transactional, right? If you lead the conversation and you do it well, you will get followers. And why do we need this? Well, I'll tell you. We're going to skip that. This is more important. As Jeff Ernst, the principal analyst of Forrester, puts it, businesses don't buy in your perspective don't buy your product or service. They buy in your perspective and approach to solving their problems. Right? You think about that. Your approach to solving their problems. And so I broke this down into 3 types of thought leadership. And I thought this is, because everybody talks about thought leadership, but I thought, how do you actually do this well? So my wife and I came up with this. She was very helpful. And we broke it down into industry thought leadership, where you take a thought leadership plan, how you are transforming your industry. I think folks who do this really well, Moz.com is a great example, how they talk about SEO and they transform their industry through SEO practices, right? A B2C example of industry thought leadership could be Chipotle, where they talk about sustainable fast food, something we never thought was possible 10 years ago. And now McDonald's is in a heap of trouble. Product thought leadership, I think Marketo did this really well. They talk about how marketing automation transforms this product. Their product transforms what you do. So marketing automation, it takes your marketing department from a cost center to a revenue driver. That's transformation. That's crazy. Product thought leadership in a B2C case, you could say GoPro. GoPro is in the camcorder business, for Christ's sake. The camcorder business, who would have thought that? But now they're a media company. They product transformation. They were taking a camcorder, a dying business. They went up against phones and iPhones, and they won. That's crazy powerful. And then finally, number 3, cultural thought leadership. I call it in the B2B space, or in the B2C space, you could say social responsibility. A great example of cultural thought leadership, I think, is look at Netflix. Netflix released their internal culture document on SlideShare. And it just talked about how they're different, how their employees are structured, what the benefits are. It's a really powerful thing. They didn't do anything. They just released this thing. They did not design this for SlideShare. But Sheryl Sandberg called it the most important document to ever come out of Silicon Valley. And it's gotten millions of views on SlideShare. It's crazy. And if this is an easy win for small business marketers too, is how is your culture defined in your small business, right? What makes you unique? If you upload that, if you just create a quick SlideShare, you can use Canva, which is a free platform, or my favorite, Haiku Deck, which integrates directly with SlideShare. Tell your story of how your organization is different, how you highlight your employees, but just tell that story and then tag it with hashtag culture code. Free quick win on SlideShare around thought leadership. But they always confuse this too. Thought leader versus thought leadership. This is Mr. Ozzy Osbourne. He's a thought leader. This is Black Sabbath. They are thought leaders, right? But you don't confuse thought leader with thought leadership. These are 2 very different things. When Ozzy Osbourne left Black Sabbath, they thought that Black Sabbath could not continue on because the thought leader had left. Much like organizations are afraid to invest in a thought leader or to have some sort of thought leader built up in their company because what if he leaves? Oh God, right? But what happened when Ozzy left is he left a gaping void for Mr. Ronnie James Dio to step in, and they continued on and achieved thought leadership collectively instead of individually. So stop thinking about thought leadership as a one-person game. Start thinking about how you can tap into the insights of your small business, your experts, and collectively achieve thought leadership. That's what's going to differentiate you from the product next to you. This is from the British Phonographic Institute of Influence. I'm not making that up. This is a real chart and shows that, again, 4 decades later, Black Sabbath is the most influential band on the planet. Why is that? Because they took blues and they transformed it into something truly novel, which is heavy metal, something no one ever heard before. And look at them today, the most influential band on the planet. But this is not a new idea. Betty Crocker. Anybody know this story? Love this story. 1937, Betty Crocker selling flour. Flour. What are their competition selling? Flour. How do you differentiate yourself? Well, thought leadership, content marketing, the 2 together. This is how you do it. They started the world's first cooking program. It was a radio show. The world's first cooking show. That's how they differentiated themselves from their competition, and they killed it. This could be, this is the start of HGTV. By the way, if I see one more goddamn tiny house show, my wife watches this stuff constantly. Who can live in these things? 250 square feet? Go to Home Depot and get a shed. Or a storage unit. Anyway, but Betty Crocker created the world's first cooking program, right? It was a radio show in the 1930s. This is content marketing in the 1930s. And then they created the world's first cookbook, which could be their big rock. But look at them today. Now they're a leader. Who else creates flour? Gold medal? Are they still around? I don't know. That's the only thing I can think of. Betty Crocker, man. What a great example. Oh, here we go. This is my finale. This is called The Death of One-Dimensional Marketer. This hit me after the past 4 or 5 years of running very small content teams and being a one-man content machine myself. But I will tell you this. If you're an expert in any one thing as a marketer today, you're easily disposable. And what do I mean by that? What I mean is, especially as a small business owner, you need to figure out all these disciplines of marketing and you need to pull them together. You don't have to be an expert in any one thing, but you have to understand how they all work together to drive these results. I'm not an email marketing expert, but I understand how email drives results for content marketing. I'm not an SEO expert, but I understand how the web interprets my content to deliver results on the first page, right? So pull that all together, and you have what I call the marketing team of the future as demonstrated by KISS. I got 1 minute. I'm going to cruise through this pretty quick. What you have here, this is the organizational chart. This is what it looks like in action. The 4 unique band members working together to deliver an amazing product. When I was watching KISS in Vegas, it hit me. They figured this stuff out 40 years ago. You have 4 band members on stage, each with a unique individual role, and they're synced together beautifully to deliver this experience called a song, which we all love. This is what it looks like. Mr. Peter Criss, the drummer, laying the groundwork with SEO. He plays directly into Paul Stanley, the vocals, the voice and tone of the band, which is social media. Plays directly into Mr. Gene Simmons, the content, the core of the band. Gene writes all the best songs. He sings the song that Paul can't sing because Paul's voice is too damn high. And he plays right into Mr. Ace Frehley, the demand gen team, tying it all together with a sweet guitar solo. In the B2C space, we call that acquisition. But this is what it looks like. These 4 members all working together seamlessly to deliver this experience that we are looking for moving forward. Now, they consistently deliver content their fans want to consume and share. These are their big rocks. This is all coming together so perfectly for me. Now, you might be wondering why there are why Monster's up here twice. You might be saying that was not a very good record. I put it up here twice because there was a Brazilian edition with a bonus DVD that I thought was really good. Then most importantly, their PR guy. Doc McGee goes on tour with the band because he guides their vision as the world's hottest band. He sits with them. And they go on tour and deliver these amazing experiences, event marketing. And most importantly, they built a thriving community of KISS Army fans. I'm a card-carrying member of the KISS Army. I have been for 30 years. I feel like I'm part of a bigger movement. I have other KISS Army fans to lean on when I have a problem. I feel like I'm part of something bigger, a much bigger movement. So think about your community, even as a small business community. Do your members feel like they're part of something bigger, a collective movement? Can they lean on one another? Do they have a place where they can share their thoughts and their interests and their reviews of the last 2 KISS shows? If they don't, then you're missing opportunities. This is my favorite quote of all time from Mr. Paul Stanley. He said this when I was in Vegas, and I took this picture. People want a thrill, people want a spectacle, and people love to be entertained. As a content marketer, that is my mantra. That is what I think of every time I create a piece of content. Content marketing is fun. Marketing is fun, even in the B2B space. That is a guitar pick on the end of Mr. Paul Stanley's tongue. I took this picture. He spit it. It hit me in the face. It fell on the ground. A girl next to me grabbed it. I still don't have that pick. But I will get it. I know that girl. Anyway, that's my book. Everything I know about content marketing and social media rolled up into one with some fun little stories around rock and roll. This is my next book coming out on Heavy Metal Day, Alive and Amplified, a rock and roll guide for developing your personal brand. And that's it. Thank you so much.